Hello viewers, Super GT here. Welcome back to the world of Gran Turismo 7 multiplayer. In this one I'm going to jump online, have a couple of races, and if you watched my video from a few days ago, we ended that one on a curious note, coming up against these L500 hybrids, which seem to be the fastest car that you could possibly use for this deep forest race. And once again, that situation appears to be very much the same here, as we have, well, 4 of them at the front of the pack. I've overtaken 2 of them with the incredible launch here of the R34 Skyline. And throughout this video, I wanted to take the challenge to them by trying to beat them in other cars, but also I was going to take a look at it, the L500, and see if I could use it myself and see why it's so damn quick. So the situation is developing throughout the week as more and more people are clocking on that this hybrid is easily the fastest car to use, and the lap times therefore are getting quicker and quicker. Now, I think there's a very good reason for it, and many of you actually mentioned this in my previous video. And the main reason, as you can see here, as those cars go flying off into the distance, the main reason is that they are hybrid, and therefore they kind of circumvent the horsepower restriction. So there's a horsepower restriction for this race of 295 horsepower. We can't have any more than that. The L500 has 268, but it also has hybrid power, which assists it very much down the straight. As you can see, we keep up with it initially, but then it just drives off on the rest of the straight. So there's nothing you can really do about it if you don't also have the hybrid power. So this was quite an interesting thing to note, and I was going to test this in the next race. As we come through the first corner here, looks like someone had an impromptu visit to Barrier on the outside of the corner, and we move up into third. I'm able to keep up with the 2 L500s through the middle sector, the twisty part of the circuit, as that car actually doesn't handle the best. It's on the 2 very long straights where the hybrid power really helps. And as you can see, easy demonstration of it there, just flies off into the distance, and yeah, there's not really much you can do to contend with that. And by the end of the race here, the end of lap 3, this guy going back past me. Now here's the interesting part, okay? The L500 hybrid runs out of hybrid power on the 4th lap of the race. So for 3 laps it's fine, and as you can see here, I'm actually able to go faster than it down the straight because it's run out of power. So this is actually quite an interesting thing to note, because I feel as though without that hybrid, without that extra energy, the car is actually fairly balanced with the other cars in this class. It's just that the hybrid is just a kind of easy way to get around the horsepower restriction, as I said. So quite an interesting thing to note, and you know, if they change the rules slightly, maybe you're not allowed to use hybrid cars, and actually it'll be very balanced, I think. So we finished that race in third. Not a bad result. We still beat 2 of those L500s, but I think it was time to give that car a go myself. So we have to jump into Brand Central, head over to Peugeot, and here it is. It costs 1 million credits, so it's not exactly cheap, but I wanted to test it out to see exactly what the fuss is all about. The main things you have to do: add ballast, and also add the sports hard tyres, and then not really much else to do actually. So you have to add 200 kilos of ballast, because naturally this car is 1,000 kilos. The limit is 1,200, which you have to be over or equal to. So adding 200, just changing the placement of the ballast, changing the tyres, and then my car was ready to be raced. And we did a quick little test here to see how it would perform. And first off here, actually nailing my braking point into the first corner. And we were braking about the 200 board there, which is definitely a lot earlier than the R34 Skyline I was just using. So the brakes definitely aren't as good. Through this middle sector, it does feel quite clunky, quite slow. But as we complete our first sector here, 28.2, which is actually pretty comparable with the R34. It's about the same sort of times that you'd be doing. And down the back straight here, this is where it really excels, as we've seen, hitting 150 miles an hour quite easily, 160 miles an hour in fact, 169 by the time I'm braking, which actually was a little bit too late. I braked on the 150 board, and for this car you want to brake on the 200. I did it again. So obviously I just wasn't quite used to braking 50 meters earlier than I needed to, or than I thought I should. But eventually I got there, and you can see here, getting into the corner. So you have to brake about 50 meters earlier in this car because of the extra speed and because of the brakes not being quite as good. But let's give it a go in a race. You can see the R34 just behind us there. The top 5 on this grid are all in the L500. And we're going to see, there we go, all the four-wheel drive cars go flying through at the beginning of the race, trying to make their way through the pack. I'm going to chop over to the left-hand side just in front of that R34. An R34, one of the Skylines at least. Keep it on the inside, making a bit of contact on the apex. And then as we go up the hill here, getting a good run against this R34 and moving up into 4th position. There's always a bit of a mad dash on the first lap with all the four-wheel drives. Oh, actually, there's someone going flying into the shadow realm on the right-hand side, up into 3rd. There's always quite an interesting mix on the first lap between the hybrids and the non-hybrids before the race settles down, and then the L500s can really flex their muscles on the straights and begin to quite easily pull away. As we descend onto the bridge, onto the left-hander, onto the back straight, a bit of contact between the French drivers up in front. And this is where we can show the true power of this car and have a look at the hybrid power. So for those that didn't know, that's where it is shown, the green little battery icon there. And as I said earlier, it lasts about 3 laps before it runs out. This is a 4-lap race, so you're going to run out on the 4th lap. So by that point, you need to kind of try and get away as we go for a massive lunge against this Frenchman. He does a nice little old switcheroo on me. So I've been old switcherooed on the good old hairpin there. And let's see if we can just try to pull away. In fact, looking behind, there's a massive gulf in distance between myself and 3rd place, as the rest of the competition becomes smaller and smaller pixels in the rearview mirror. Let's brake on the 200 board, try to get into this corner, taking massive chunks out of the leader there on the brakes into the first corner. And actually, I don't think he got a good launch off this corner. I kept it in 3rd gear. I think he may well have gone down into 2nd and then had to shift back up. But I don't have the inside line here. He just managed this, well, yeah, kind of edges me out there onto the edge of the track, so he retakes the lead of the race. But we're going to be nice and patient here. We've still got 2.5 laps remaining in this one. There's no need to rush at this point in time. Coming off the slow corners, actually going into the back of him there. I think I have slightly better acceleration. Either he's using the wrong gear, not getting all the power early enough, or his setup is different. But clearly not very good off the slow corners. Onto the back straight then, which is where we can potentially go for a move. Into the hairpin, probably the easiest place to go for an overtake, given it's the biggest braking zone. Into the sharpest corner. Tucking into the slipstream, which doesn't really have too much of an effect on this game, I've noticed. It does have an effect, but it's definitely not as strong as GT Sport. On the brakes, he goes to the inside, as he's more than entitled to do. Defends it nice and early. We're going to go for the old switcheroo on him. Doesn't quite work. So it's a good little defence that by the Frenchman, trying to preserve his position here at the front of the pack. We're easily pulling away, setting a 1:38.5, which is a good half a second quicker than any car I've driven around this track in this race. I think the quickest lap I did in the R34 was a 39.0. So coming through the infield, we're both a little bit wide here. This car not really performing too well on that sector. I mean, I've seen aircraft carriers turn around quicker than that. So it's a bit of a handful through the twisty section. And I thought I'd spring a surprise by going for a move into this corner. Not normally a corner you see the moves getting made, as you'd normally wait for this straight. But I thought, you know what, let's try and spring a surprise. Get in there nice and early and get the job done. And I think it worked. Well, it definitely worked because I'm in 1st place, which is the whole point of racing. Coming down into the back straight, onto the hairpin, braking at the 150, just before actually. And actually, you know what? We've got into the corner. He goes up the inside. We've done the old switcheroo. So there's 1-1 old switcheroos now between the two of us. And as you can see, hybrid power is nearly done. In fact, by the time we cross the line here, it is done, setting a 37.8, which is about a second and a half quicker than anything I've managed in any other car. So this car definitely has the edge. There's no doubt about that. It quite clearly is quicker, and it is the quickest car in this race that you can possibly use. Well, there might be some other car that we don't really know about, but at the moment, this is the car that everyone's clocked onto. As you can see, down the back straight, I've run out of the power, so I'm only topping out at 130, not much over 130, almost 140, 139 on the brakes, and before I was doing, 170, and actually 140 is pretty much about the same as what I was getting in other cars, so it's actually pretty similar, and this kind of shows to me that the game is actually balanced if you take away hybrid. The speeds I'm reaching, the lap times I'm achieving in this car are actually similar compared to other cars. It's just the hybrid. That's all it is. That is creating all the difference. And drinking game for the word hybrid, because I think I've said it about a million times. Now I set a faster qualifying time here, 35.7. So just over 2 seconds quicker than the time I did in the Nissan R34. Definitely showing the prowess of this machine. And wanted to do one more race in this car. I thought about moving across there. It was going to be a little bit too late, as the four-wheel drive cars were coming in thick and fast. I thought, okay, I can't really swap across there. Gonna have to go around the outside here through turn 1. And unfortunately for this guy, we kind of get sideswiped by this guy in the white Skyline, and it causes a chain reaction of death and destruction in our wake. I could probably edit in some explosions there, but yeah, unfortunately that caused a lot of carnage, and we try and set our sights on catching up with the offender and repassing him. It shouldn't be too tricky on the back straight, but he is actually doing a good job of pulling away and trying to escape our attention here. So he's about a second ahead at the beginning of this straight onto this braking zone. Is the left-hander. Got to get this corner right, extending out into the green section as you can do. About 1.2 seconds behind at the start of the straight, and then now we can really stretch our legs and flex our muscles as we quite easily go flying past. The difference is just ridiculous. It really is just like not even close. It's kind of a bit silly, really, to be honest. And then on the brakes, we've done the job into the lead of the race, and that was pretty much that race done. So I wouldn't really be challenged from there to the end. Setting a 136, in fact 2 136s on that race, before setting on the final lap, interestingly, a mid 39, which is again very comparable with the non-hybrid cars. So balance is there, hybrid is just killing it, and it'd be interesting to see what comes up in next week's daily races, weekly races we should really call them, but I thought I'd tune up some other cars. We're going to go with this, the Nissan GTO. It's not a Nissan, it's a Mitsubishi. What the hell am I talking about? A couple of things you had to change to make it work for this race. Bit of power. We changed some of the racing parts as well. And we're on pole position courtesy of our improved lap time in the hybrid. So let's see what we can do in this car. Quickly put it together in about 5 minutes. So not really much work done on it. And you see initially a very good launch against the Peugeots. The Peugeots have a really poor launch actually, going into the first corner, just covering off the inside, but we do actually get hit anyway, and then have to surrender first, have to surrender second as the two hybrids go through into first and second place. Now I think my main job here is really just to see the best position we can get. But it doesn't last very long, as we kind of get nerfed into Barry R for another impromptu visit. Barry R, you know, around some tracks, he's just a very popular guy, and loads of people just want to visit him. And today, very much case in point, showing off his popularity. Now, sat here in 6th position, you do love to see it. Just really trying to get to grips, excuse the pun, with the car to see exactly how it performs. Been overtaken here by a Porsche onto the back straight. And yeah, we're kind of in free fall here. Started on pole position, but definitely not in pole position right now, in 7th. And in fact, we're going to be overtaken here by the R32 into the tunnel, into the braking zone of the hairpin. Can we do anything here on the outside? Has he braking too late? We've got a yellow flag. He's gone a bit deep, I think. And there we go. A textbook old switcheroo. Crofty would be proud of that one. Into the first corner, lap number 2. It actually performs really nicely on the brakes, actually getting into that apex pretty good. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of lap time this car can do compared to the other cars I've used. Quite a good little battle here in the middle of the pack. And I actually think that the balancing of the multiplayer is there. Even with all the tuning fiasco and how there are glitches and stuff and bugs. Now this guy kind of wanted to shepherd me wide onto the grass, but not sure why. And then at the end of the straight, I went for this move. So I'm getting in the slipstream. This car actually pretty decent in a straight line. And then he chops across very late. I go for the move and he moves very late. And unfortunately for him, I just couldn't quite spot my braking zone. You know, it's one of those unfortunate things that happens. And then suddenly he'd left the room and entered the shadow realm via our good friend and middleman Barry R. So that's kind of what happens really when you just chop across a little bit too late in the braking zone unnecessarily. I just couldn't quite spot my braking point, unfortunately for him. What a shame, what a shame. But a little bit later into the race, we're having a really good battle here. Decide to defend my position early, and he goes to the outside. Just cover it off on the apex. I mean, just a textbook defence there, really. Not much you could do about that. But it's a good little battle between the two of us. GTO versus Skyline. At the end of that lap is a slow lap, courtesy of the incident at turn 1, which is now resolved, as we're going to try our best to catch up with 5th place, which would, I suppose, be a decent result given I don't know this car and I put it together in 5 minutes. As heading into the infield, quite used to this track now. Deep Forest is actually one of my favourites. I do actually really like this track, and to be honest, it actually wasn't really one of the ones I'd pick. You know, when I was playing Gran Turismo 1, 2, 3, 4 back in the day. I wouldn't say it was always one of my favourites back then, but certainly driving it now, I do like the remodelled version of it. Having said that, I would like to see some other classics return. I mean, how about a bit of Seattle? Launching some other cars going up the hills on Seattle would be pretty fun in multiplayer if they were to bring that track back. Likewise, Grand Valley Speedway. Or I do really think they need to bring back one of the special stages. Special stage Clubman Route 5. That's got to come back surely. Into the braking zone. We did catch up with this Skyline, but it wasn't going to be enough. We're going to finish this race in 6th position, setting a 140 on that lap. So this car wasn't too bad, but certainly about a second off, I would say, where I'd ideally need to be, ignoring the Peugeot L500's times. So there it was, 6th place. Okay, not too bad. I wanted to try one more car, the Porsche 911 GT3 RS from 2016. And here it is on pole position. Can we do a slightly better job from the boys from Stuttgart, giving me this fantastic package, sweeping immediately over to the left-hand side to cover the inside. And that kind of triggers all sorts of mayhem in the back of shot. As again, people turning right on a straight into the wall. And my racing experience tells me that that is not what you want to be doing. And their position after the first corner also should tell them that that's not what they want to be doing. But there you go, you have to learn the hard way sometimes. So I found myself in a familiar situation here, racing up against the Peugeots, and then suddenly I'm not racing against the Peugeots because they have teleported into another dimension, setting there a 39.7. So actually, you know what, this car is actually alright. It's almost like Formula 1 is the Peugeot hybrid car, then I'm in Formula 1.5. By Formula 1.5 standards, a 1:39 is a decent lap time for this race. So, in summary, really, I think there is balance to the multiplayer. You know, once you do tune the cars up, I think they are actually fairly comparable. And when you take away the hybrid power of the L500, it is actually very similar as well. I know that many of you aren't too keen on the tuning, but I still think that there is potential for it if they get it right and get rid of the bugs and stuff. But let's see what they do next week on Monday when they change the races. I think Daily Race C should be coming back by then. So I'm very intrigued to see what happens. We're going to live stream it. We're going to make more videos and see what happens. But that is all we have time for in this one. Thank you so much for watching. I shall catch you next time. Goodbye.